All right, welcome back in, guys. It seems the NBA has a massive problem. Everyone online is talking about tanking and how it's destroying everything. And it stems from one trade. This one trade really proves everything about NBA tanking that's so wrong. The Utah Jazz traded for Jaren Jackson with no thought about this year. It sounds crazy. They don't want him to play this year. They don't need him for this year. In fact, they're going to have him sit out the rest of this year. The injury is crazy. Jaren Jackson is now having knee surgery, is not going to play at all for the rest of the year. And it seems intentional. It seems like he was traded, he had a physical, he passed that physical, he played in games for the Jazz, and now they're saying, "Oh yeah, we forgot he's got this knee injury. We had a doctor look at it. He's going to need surgery." But never once in Memphis did they mention this. Never once during the trade did we hear about knee pain. He's struggling with anything with his knee. And now all of a sudden he's got this massive knee problem that he's going to have to sit out. It's clearly tanking. They think we're stupid. They think NBA fans don't care, and it's all about what we can be next year, and it's not about competing right now. But this just seems like wrong. I think the league seriously has a problem. Everyone online, the big influencers in the NBA space are talking about it. How can we fix this? What are the solutions? Let's watch a clip from Brian Windhorst and see what he has to say.
People would say, oh, they're tanking. But the players who are on the court aren't tanking.
Right.
The tanking was done on the injury list.
Right. Or saying to Zubac, you're wearing street clothes
That's
tonight.
the injury list. Or whatever. They say that he has an injury. Okay.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
But what's happening with Utah now, the stakes are so high for Utah, and there's so much tanking going on elsewhere. There's so much competition for tanking that they are now actively taking their players off the court. So Lauri Markkanen.
Sat for the fourth quarter.
Yeah. He had the other day he had 27 points in 27 minutes. They sat him on the bench, and then their coach, Will Hardy, stuck his hands in his pocket. Literally stuck his hands in his pockets and watched as his team gave up a 17-point lead, didn't even call a timeout. Game tonight, which is Sacramento versus Utah.
Okay.
Two teams that are extremely tanking right now. So yesterday afternoon,
Extremely tanking.
The injury list came out, or the injury report came out, and Lauri Markkanen, who I will point out a month ago missed 7 games due to the flu. I hope he's feeling better. I wasn't there. Maybe he was sick for 7 games.
Understood.
He was listed as being out due to rest.
Oh.
For this game.
He needs a little bit more, huh?
Right. So
come on now.
I don't know how much you want me to go into this because we're talking about the Jazz, but the other day they held their best guard, Keontae George, out of the game and said it was for rest. And then they played another guard, Isaiah Collier, 48 minutes.
That's Brian Windhorst, the biggest NBA insider on the Rich Eisen show, talking about this exact thing, tanking, the Jazz, Jaren Jackson Jr., what really is going on. And you can see they're being a little tongue-in-cheek. They're not really going after the NBA. They're kind of saying, this isn't right, but what are we going to do? We're going to ask Adam Silver some questions. And he's not really going to say much, that being Adam Silver, the commissioner. I don't know what they could say. It's quite clearly the Jazz are tanking. They're sitting their best players. Even if they play during the game, they're still sitting their best players just so they can lose, so they can get a higher pick. And this is the way of the league now. Get a good core group of guys and add a young elite draft pick that's on a relatively good salary because he was just picked in the draft. And next thing you know, your team could explode. I mean, it happened with the Spurs when they drafted Tim Duncan. It happened with OKC where they traded for Shea and they got all these picks. And now look at their roster. It's happened with the Sixers. Trust the process. We're going to get a lot of picks. And this just seems to be the way of the future for NBA teams is get a core group and add a young guy to the mix. So I don't know. I just don't think anyone is going to come up with a solution to change it. But that's why I am here to offer my solution. You might think it's crazy, but to stop the blatant tanking, I think there needs to be a tournament between all the teams that don't make the playoffs, don't make the play-in, to determine the number one pick. I think this is the best way to get rid of tanking. Obviously, in the English Premier League, if you're in the bottom three, you get relegated. So that would be the best way to get rid of tanking. But you can't do that in the NBA. Like, where are you going to send the teams to the G League? It doesn't make any sense. You can't relegate teams. So I think if you have something up for grabs that, is a big reward, the number one pick, make teams compete for it. Make them play for it. I think the number one thing that you have to do, first of all, is lower the amount of games. Everyone seems to be in agreement on this. Instead of 82, it should be about 70 games. So you play 70 games, you get rid of the the tournament that they have during the year, and instead you just have a single elimination tournament at the end of the year for all the teams that don't make the playoffs, and the winner gets the number one pick. I think it's easy. That way teams can't start playing G League guys. They can't start playing their worst roster, halfway through the season, 3/4 of the way through the season, because at the end of the year, they're going to want their best team out there to try and win the number one pick. Then you can get Cooper Flag, or you can get a Wembanyama, or, you can get whoever the number one guy is if you go out and win it. And people would say, well, then why would the players play hard? They don't care about a number one pick for next year. Money. Add incentives. Just like a playoff bonus, every round you win in this losers playing bracket for the number one seed, you get more money. And if you win the whole thing, you get a few $1,000,000. You make it to the finals, you get $1 million. Whatever it is, you keep stacking money if you win in this tournament. And it's single elimination. Basketball's fun with single elimination. Everyone loves March Madness. The NBA should use a component of this. And then you play for the number one pick. If you earn it, if you win it, you get to pick first. I think that's a good way to try and combat tanking. Now, some people would say, well, then the teams in the middle will start tanking because they don't want to make the playoffs. They just want to get the number one pick. And I'm like, I don't think they would. I think the chance to make the playoffs, everyone believes once we get in, we can make some noise, we could do some damage. So I don't think they would start tanking if you're in the middle. So then the question is, well, what do you do with the other picks? I think to determine the other picks, 2 through 13, you have a panel of 50, 100 NBA insiders, people that write about the league, whatever it is. And they take an anonymous survey about who is the worst team in the league for next year, who has the worst outlook, who is in the most trouble with contracts, with their roster, with their front office, with their draft picks, with everything that goes into having a team, who is in the most trouble for next year. So in my scenario, hypothetically, if there was a tournament at the end of the year for the number one pick, let's just say the Bulls won that pick, then the panel would vote on after that who are the worst teams. And then you would say the Kings are the worst team. They've got not a good outlook. They've got massive salaries, players that don't fit together. It's not going to work. So then the Kings would pick second. And then you keep doing that. Who's got the worst outlook after that? Okay, it's the Wizards. They might have traded for AD and Trey, but it's not going to help them. They've got a bad outlook. They're going to pick third. Who's after that? The Jazz. Who's after that? Maybe it's Memphis. You can get people to vote on who is the worst team instead of leaving it up to ping pong balls. And sometimes it just feels like the NBA doesn't have a grasp on this, and they don't really understand that tanking is just so boring to watch. Teams intentionally trying to lose. And especially with this Jaren Jackson, it's like there was nothing about his injury. He cleared his medical, he was playing, he got traded. No one in Memphis said anything about his knee, none of that. And then all of a sudden, he's got this serious knee problem that needs surgery. No, they're tanking. They're trying to lose. They're trying to make him sit out the season because they look pretty good with him. So I don't know. That's my solution. Make people play for the number one pick. I think it would be more exciting. People would maybe turn in at the end of the year just to see the losers bracket, so to speak. The teams that didn't make the playoffs play in a single game kind of tournament to see who gets the number one pick. You could sell sponsors and make money. I know you got to pay the players more money, but I don't know. I think you should cut back on the games to 70 and add a tournament for the number one pick. So let me know what you guys think. If this is crazy, this will never work. The NBA won't do anything. Adam Silver's not going to change a thing. Let me know what you guys think.